Please don't forget to like our channel and leave your comments. If you haven't already, please subscribe to help our channel grow. We have some extraordinary stories to share, which, if scientifically proven, could completely change our understanding of human relations. I must confess, I am a somewhat skeptical person. The only reason I'm not skeptical about FM's reports is that they are still making me stop and rethink, almost 20 years later. I have changed my thinking about some things concerning our stay on Earth, and I am now sure that there is a reason for us to be here, and that there is a force greater than anything we know taking care of us, even when we don't deserve it. One important thing to know about me is that I became an atheist from a very early age. My interest was purely in science, particularly astronomy and astrophysics. Everything I studied pointed me towards an infinite universe that was still expanding, and I wondered why a tiny planet like Earth was the only one in the universe. I still questioned why God would create an infinite universe with millions of planets if man couldn't even leave its own orbit. We went to the moon once and never returned, so what was the point of it all? With millions of planets and stars, we cannot even fully know our world, so why would God create all of this? When someone asked me how I thought life had started on Earth, I simply replied that it was the result of an unfortunate and improbable accident. That was my life until I turned 22 and graduated in physics. By then, I was already dating a girl who lived in my neighborhood, a few hours from my house. We had been together for 4 years and had plans to get married in 2 years when she finished law school. I was saving money to buy a car, which would make my life a lot easier, as I had gotten an internship in a city a little far away. Commuting there was a hassle, and sometimes I was late, which resulted in warnings from the school director. But life was happening. Everything was flowing until that night. I remember that night very well. It was April 2nd, 2005, and it was a very hot night. I was working the last shift at school and would get out of there at 10 p.m. and walk to the train station. It was a long walk, but I had to pick up the pace as the last train passed the station at 10:20 p.m. If I missed it, I would have to take a bus across town and then take another to my house, and I would only arrive home around midnight or so. As I hurried along, I couldn't stop thinking about a debate I had with a student in class about free will. I just listened as they talked, dominating my world to expose what I really thought. From an early age, I learned that atheists are the most discriminated group that exists, more than all other minorities put together. Many times I was silent and didn't say what I really thought. I didn't want to be pointed out as a person without faith and be excluded from things. Until I heard a student say the following sentence: God cannot be held responsible for the bad things that happen in the world. Man is the one who makes his own decisions. He is the one who chooses to do evil. Free will is a man choosing his path and being held accountable for it. That's when I felt I should open my mouth, and I just said, "Someone show me at what time I chose to be born in Brazil and not in Europe. At what time did I choose to be poor? At what point did I choose not to be 10 centimeters taller, for example?" We had a lot of laughs, and the student then said, "God works in mysterious ways." At the time, I replied, "So he must not be going to work." A good time was when the bell rang, closing the subject. At the most, I managed to catch the train. I arrived just in time as it was arriving at the station. The carriage I entered was empty. There was only one inside, so I used headphones and listened to music while watching the city rush by through the train window. I was almost falling asleep when I noticed something poking me right in the shoulder. I woke up scared and saw that what had poked me was simply a revolver. 2 men standing right in front of me were saying something that I couldn't understand. The sound in my headphones was too loud, and I just saw the men gesturing a lot at me. So, I got up. They looked pretty nervous as I tried to understand what was going on. One of them pushed me back into the chair. In extreme situations, some attitudes can determine our fate, for better or for worse, in a matter of seconds. What I did was put my hand inside my backpack to turn off the sound directly on the phone, to see if I could hear what they were talking about. I did that instead of just taking the headphones off from my ear. That was my fatal mistake. One of the men who had a gun in his hand definitely thought I was looking for a gun in my backpack. When I finally found what I was looking for and reached for the phone, I pressed the volume button and the sound of the headphones stopped. Another sound that followed was a big bang, and I saw the barrel of the gun release a spark. I noticed a metallic ball coming towards me, and what followed was like a hit on my head. My neck was thrown backwards, and I felt my whole body falling to the floor. I still had my eyes open, and I saw a large red stain of blood form next to my head and take over the floor of the train. The dreams were getting further and further away, and the lights began slowly blurring. Then suddenly, everything went dark. When I noticed the light come on, I also started to notice the screams that came from nowhere. The two senses were turned on at once. The screams got louder, and the light that was shining was getting brighter. Then I got up, and my consciousness started to come back. The light that was now illuminating everything around me was just the sun, and I still asked you to feel it when a soccer ball hit my stomach. The screams continued, and it was the kids playing in the playground. I was in the middle of the school soccer field, and someone yelled at me to get out of the way. I was disturbing the match. And I remembered that day was the day I was watching the eclipse of the sun, and I ended up entering the field while the kids were playing ball. I ended up taking a hard ball in the pit of the stomach that took all the air out of me. I was 8 years old when it happened, and now I was watching it again in the flesh at 22 years old. I was still walking a little confused out of the Campino. Nobody there seemed to realize that I was an adult. I got to a stool and sat down, completely stunned. That's when a man sat down next to me and looked me deep in the eyes. I felt that I knew him, but I wasn't sure. Maybe I had already seen and talked to him. I didn't know for sure. In fact, I was very confused, and he didn't say anything to me. He just kept looking at me with a slight smile on his lips, as if he was patiently waiting for me to recognize that little by little, a small puzzle was being solved. That man was the school porter, Armando, a man very dear to everyone at school, a friend of the children, a very sweet man, affectionate with everyone. I tried to remember what he said to me before, but I never understood it. Now he repeated it, and I finally understood. He looked at me and said, "In my Father's house, there are many mansions," and he held my hand. His face lit up right in front of me. It was like a rainbow of light came out of his eyes. Now I knew who he was. It was like a movie. All the questions and doubts I had ever asked in my life came to me at once, and I felt that he knew all of them. I didn't need to speak or ask anything. He answered me, but not with words. I felt enveloped in a mantle of protective light that I had never felt in my entire life. All the agony caused by the unanswered questions, all the nights of anguish trying to understand my place in the world, disappeared. And an endless search for an answer that would bring me peace. And I found the answer with just one look and with the touch of your hand on my shoulder. And then, I felt my heart beat much more lightly. I felt like a cloud of dust left my eyes, letting me see. Finally, I understood that he was forgiving me for all the thoughts I had had. I understood that he had been guiding me by his side, even though I had spent a lifetime doubting his existence. I was experiencing his mercy, even though I didn't deserve it. He took my arm and put me on my feet, and with his hands, he showed me the way. A corridor that led to the back of the school cafeteria. I felt that was the way I should go, so I went without doubting, without questioning, and without looking back. I felt I just should trust, close my eyes, and go, and that's exactly what I did. And then everything went dark again, and when I saw a light again, it was like a light bulb, a yellowish light, right above my eyes. As I fixed my gaze on that beam of light, a face covered my vision, and it was my mother's face, with full eyes of tears, smiling at me. The sounds around were of joy, and once again, the senses awakened together. In a short time, many faces appeared on the side of my mother's face, and I loved each one of them. According to what I was told, I was in a coma for 48 days. I had 2 cardiac arrests. Today, the doctor's most optimistic prediction was that I would be lying in bed, needing care for the rest of my life. But I just lost the use of my legs. Yes, just that, and I am very grateful. During my recovery, my mother always told me about the things that had happened while I was unconscious. She told me about all the people who had come to visit me and all the words and all the letters, notes, telegrams I had received. And how happy everyone had been to hear that I was recovering and that I would soon be out of the hospital. She told me, with a face of surprise, about a very unexpected visit that I had received in the first few days and asked me if I remembered SEU Armando, the doorman at the school where my sister and I studied. He's still alive. Do you believe it? She tells me. And then I felt a lump in my throat. I couldn't answer anything. I just remembered that feeling of peace and welcome. He left a gift for you, my mother told me, handing me a small box. When I went to open it, it was a small ornament, a set of 3 little houses made of ceramics. It reminded me that I had been given a second chance, and that one of those abodes was waiting for me. I looked for Armando at my old school. Nobody else knew about him. Nobody could say where he lived and worked. One of my old classmates once said he heard a story that he had moved out of the country many years ago with his family. And until one day, I felt that I should stop looking, and I understood that I should look for what I had already found. And that he never left me.